Welcome to episode 2 of the Floating Economy. For decades, marinas have been designed around vessels, around storage, service, and fuel. But I believe we're entering a new era, an era where water itself becomes programmable economic space, where slips just aren't places to park boats, but platforms for hospitality, where marinas evolve from private enclaves into community driven waterfront ecosystems. That shift doesn't happen through theory. It happens through people who have lived on the water, who grew up beside it, built businesses on it, and understand what it's kept out of reach for far too long. Today's guest is someone who has done exactly that. Marcellous Butler, known to everyone as Selly, grew up in public housing in Annapolis, Maryland. His father had a small boat, and it was the only one in the neighborhood, and that boat became a doorway. Decades later, Selly owns marinas, has built and developed waterfront assets across the Chesapeake, and in the late 90s bought his first marina in the historic Eastport neighborhood of Annapolis before most people in this industry understood what that asset class could become. But this conversation isn't about real estate, it's about proximity. It's about what happens when someone who grew up beside the water, someone who was never supposed to own a marina, decides to reshape what marinas are for. It's about access, entrepreneurship, and the quiet conviction that the most underutilized economic frontier in America has been sitting at water's edge all along. Selly is my business partner and FLOHOM's co-founder. He is also the person on our team who built what we couldn't buy, who figured out how to manufacture our floating assets when there was no playbook and no vendor willing to write one. Today, we're going to explore how his journey from the docks of Annapolis informs our vision for FLOHOM and what the marine industry looks like when the people who know it best are finally the ones building its future. Let's dive in. All right, we are live. How's it going today, Selly?
Oh man, I'm doing great. How you doing, Brian?
I'm great. Looks like you're at your marina, Butler's Marina in Annapolis. Nice view today.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful out here, man. It's feel like it's 75.
Yeah, it's finally getting warm weather. It's been a brutal winter.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
really excited to talk to you today. This is episode 2. Had a really great conversation with our partner Jerry in episode 1, and you and I were part of the Flow Home story from really day one. You were the first person that I connected with when this was just an idea. And through our journey together, learned a lot about you, your background, and your overall vision for Flow Home. And really excited just to have people understand and learn kind of where you came from, your background, and what your role is in Flow Home and helping us shape this, what we're calling the floating economy. So starting off, take me back to the early days of Selly Butler. I understand that you grew up in Annapolis in public housing, and your dad was, I believe, one of the only people that had a boat in the neighborhood, which allowed you to be able to get on the water. So just bring me back to those early days in the Butler household. Like, what was life like back then?
Oh man, well, listen. First and foremost, man, I want to thank you for putting this together because, in creating this platform where a story like mine could be shared with the world, with the internet and social media and everything. I mean, you could touch people around the world in seconds. So, I appreciate this opportunity because hopefully it's something that I'm going to say or something that we talk about that would inspire or help change someone's thinking who faced some of the challenges that I faced just coming up, being raised in public housing. And we'll get a little more into that, but it wasn't that bad. But just coming from that aspect of life that they will be inspired and achieve to do the unimaginable. So I thank you for putting that together.
You're welcome.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, just early on in life, I mean, I was the youngest of 7 kids. We were raised in public housing until I was in 6th grade, and my parents they bought their first house. But being the youngest of 7, my dad was the only person in the neighborhood that had a boat. He had a 19-foot boat. I can't really remember what type of boat it was, but that was our life. I mean, we when we weren't in school during the summer, we fished. Seemed like every day, on the weekends, even during school, especially during, once the weather got nice from April to October, we were out on the water fishing or crabbing. I could say very little joy riding because, it was really all about figuring out how to feed the family. And, it just really opened up my eyes to a lot of things.
Well, yeah. I mean, how do you think that maybe you didn't realize it at the time, but that access that you had, which a lot of people that were living that type of lifestyle didn't have that opportunity. Just from my personal experience with my nonprofit Live Water Foundation in Annapolis, working with kids that lived in the same neighborhoods that you grew up with, like I realized none of them had any access to the water. And you did. And how did that access maybe change who you are, the way you thought, or who you are, the way you think? Just because we were fortunate to have that type of access that many people didn't.
Yeah, I think it did it. I think it did a number of things for me. Some of them I didn't really realize until I got older. But at that time, it put me into a place where I wasn't seeing the same thing every day or just the normal, right? Of just being in a place where everybody's kind of, I wouldn't say, just striving and some struggling based upon the cards that they were dealt, just trying to make it day to day. But we had a chance to be out on the water. Just it's something about the water, the calm and the tranquil part of it that we were able to enjoy that riding up and down the Sever River or by the Naval Academy. You used to get to see these big houses on the water. That's even in the 70s and in the 80s, and you get to see things that open up your eyes that you normally wouldn't see on a day-to-day basis living in public housing. So I think internally or subliminally, it sparked something in me to know that I wanted more. I seen more, that I knew it was more out there than just what I was looking at on a day to day from living in public housing or going to school and back home. So yeah, it was definitely an eye opening thing for me.
Yeah. So you've talked a lot about you've hustled your way to be a serial entrepreneur, and you've done a lot of different things, learned a lot. And take me back to maybe some of those early businesses that really kind of shaped who you are today. What were some of your favorites? Maybe what was something that you found yourself in that you didn't like but learned a lot? Like take me back to some of the early days of Selly Butler and what you were doing.
Oh man, you use the word hustle, right? It's kind of a running joke between me and my wife. My wife comes from a family of educators. I mean, very fluent. I mean, doctors, lawyers out of the Pennsylvania area. I mean, her great grandfather was the first ear, nose, throat specialist, and he graduated from UPenn in 1912. And she looked at all the things that I did, and she would always say, "Man, if you ever had a chance to really, if you had a chance to have," she called a formal education. I guess she talks about like the Ivy League business school um, education. Man, you could have really did a lot of things. And I always tell her, I say, "Listen, I mean, all that's great and all that's fine, but in my life, what I've experienced and learned is that hustle will always meet opportunity,
Yeah.
right?" So you don't have to be an Ivy League graduate. You don't have to go to these big business schools. You just have to have some hustle. You have to have some hustle with yourself. And if you got some hustle with yourself, it will lead to opportunities. And it's all relative, right? I mean, you hustle in different spaces and you'll find that it's recognized all across the board, whether you're in a Fortune 500, you're in the landscaping business. If you hustling, it's going to meet opportunity. So I just use that as my superpower to say I'm always going to have that hustle because it always presented me with a bunch of different opportunities. And so if you think of some of the earlier days of the things that I've done, I started my first business in 1989. It was an auto shop. I was home for the summer. I was about to head back to my third year of college at Temple University, and I had a good friend of mine. He worked at a detail shop off of Taylor Avenue. And I went down there to see him during the summer and just was down there talking. And I mean, I just saw the guys were bringing cars in left and right, and they were detailing cars and very nice cars. And I was like, man, this is pretty, pretty good operation here, pretty simple. And yeah, I just asked him two questions. I was like, how much are they getting per detail? And I asked him how much, oh, where was he getting their supplies from? And he told me, and I was like, well, hey, if I find a spot, would you run it for me while I'm in school? And he was like, yes.
Mm.
And within 30 to 45 days, I found a place on West Street and we were in business. I mean, it's a lot more to the story, but from there on, I mean, we just continue to grow from there. We sold the business in 2001, but from there, I mean, I've got involved in a number of different ventures from the music industry, music producing, the movie industry, bail bonding, real estate, real heavy in real estate. And that's how I got into the marina business.
Yeah. So getting into the marina business, which I believe was the early '90s, you found or you discovered a marina in historic Eastport and downtown Annapolis, and were able to acquire it. Like, talk me through that whole process, because to me it's just fascinating, because you're still pretty young at the time. Like, I don't believe you had any experience in the marine industry. Like, what was appealing about the opportunity to own a marina, and kind of how the deal went down, and what it was like at that time?
Well, I don't think per se there was anything appealing about it at the time. I mean, this way I go back to use that same thing, hustle meets opportunity, right? So at that time, from I started my first business in 1989, and it was actually 1998 where we purchased the marina. So I had a 10-year run of doing business in Annapolis, and I built a pretty good reputation as a just a solid business person that was doing business in Annapolis. So once again, that leads to hustle meets opportunity. And by my dad at a young age taking us out boating, I always loved boats. So the first
Mm.
opportunity I got to buy my own boat, I bought a boat. So I purchased a Sea Ray in 1997 and I kept it at the marina in Eastport. Now I had no knowledge that the owner was interested in selling it or whatever. I just kept the boat there because it was a place that was owned by an African American guy, and I wanted to support his marina, and I kept the boat there. And lo and behold, after being there a year now, I mean, I just put the two and two together that he came and asked me because he knew I was a business person, and he came and asked me, was I interested in buying a marina? I mean, I knew nothing about the marina space, but I knew about business. I knew about real estate, and I was pretty good with math. So he gave me a number, and I was like, this makes sense to me, with no real clear vision in mind. But the number was good, so I bought it. I purchased it.
Yes, it sounds like it was, you saw an opportunity, didn't really understand the marina business at that time. Throughout the process of understanding how to operate a marina, like, what are the types of things that you learned that maybe others didn't think about? Or was there any like epiphanies owning a marina that you're like, oh, there could be some more opportunity here?
Well, when I looked at it, I looked at the basic fundamentals, and I think it's so funny because I look at private equity today and all the private equity folks that's jumping into the marina space, and they see it as a very, I would say some marinas are more complex than others because some have other things going on outside of just renting boat slips. You got service department, you got memberships, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the overall arching theme to a marina is, and even back then, I did what all the guys are doing now. And I really looked at it like it was just a parking lot for boats. So it's a very simple business to understand, right? Once I got into it, right? It was just all about how do I create more or higher slip revenue. And so that's what kept me going, right? That it was very simple. So it wasn't very complex, that I had to know a lot about a lot of things in order to just make it cash flow. Because one, I purchased it right? So the number was good. So I knew the math that if I have X amount of slips and here's my mortgage on it, I'm making cash flow,
Hmm.
right? And for years I ran it just as that. But as time went on, I started to understand that the world was changing, and now you got to try to figure out how to get creative to be able to make more revenue from the marina, with besides just slip rate and going up 3 to 5% every year on the slip rates.
Yeah. And your marina is what, 30 some slips?
30 slips, yes.
Yeah, so it's a smaller marina. I mean, something that we talk about all the time. It's, as you just said, there's only a certain amount of money that you can charge someone for that slip if you're just giving them space to keep their boat for pleasure, which I believe most of the boats in your marina are doing just that. By the way, an amazing location, right? So there's a premium to that. You have an amazing location and are fortunate to be in a great location that occupancy is never going to be an issue. But you said it is that you started to think creatively about how can I increase my revenue per slip. And before you and I even met, I think it's about a decade earlier, is you kind of had a similar vision or at least an idea of a flow home type concept. Take me back to that time and what were you thinking? How did that idea come to be? What was the opportunity and what ultimately stopped you from moving forward with it at that time?
Well, Brian, pin. I want you. That's a good thing. So pin that, and I want you to bring that same question back to me. But I'm gonna go back a little bit because I think there's a great story into how we even got to there, right?
Okay.
So when I was talking about we were using, I was doing just like all the other guys was using the marina as pretty much just a parking lot for boats. We were fortunate enough at the marina to be able to have some on land space that we could develop,
Mm,
and we actually developed like we developed not like but we developed three waterfront townhomes and a three-story mixed-use building. And in order to generate more revenue, we knew that the area was really up and coming and that waterfront was a premium. So instead of us just like building the townhouses and just renting them out on a monthly basis, we actually fully furnished the townhouses and rented them out as
mm.
short-term rentals. And I mean, it was bananas. I mean, uh,
Was
it
this
was,
even before? Was this even before Airbnb was a thing?
look, I talk to my wife all the time about that. We were doing Airbnb before Airbnb. This was 2003, I think it was
Yeah.
2003, 2004. I don't know where Airbnb started, but I don't think it was 2003, 2004. And man, it was just such a big demand. And it's so funny because the townhouses, I would say they were almost about the size of each floor. They were three stories, and each floor was probably about the size of a 50-foot boat because they were like 50 foot deep and they were only like 13 feet wide. So we did everything like we had teak and holly on the floor in the bathroom. So we made them look real boatish. And I mean, man, we just crushed it. So to that, creating that type of environment at the marina where it was giving people access that, hey, maybe they didn't have a boat, but they could come and they could stay on the water for the weekend, or they could come stay for a week, or we had people come and stay for 2 months. I mean, we had people coming from all over the world to stay here. And they were able to enjoy the waterfront because there's not a lot of waterfront places, especially at Annapolis, that you can go and stay on the water.
Right.
So it was almost similar to having that floating structure. It just wasn't floating, but it was on the water and it was made available to people to come and enjoy, even though you didn't have a boat. So I kind of just thought of that and I'm like, wow, how that really segued into the last question you just asked me and how we got there. Cause that kind of was something that just came to me as an aha moment and say, wow, this was really the precursor to taking what we did with the townhouses and actually put it on the water. So if you
Yeah.
can go back to that question for me again, that'll be great.
Well, yes. Now that you've added more context, so you experienced the short-term rental Airbnb industry before Airbnb was Airbnb, which I think it started in 2007 or 2008. So you got to experience what that opportunity looked like, both from a guest experience standpoint, both from a financial standpoint as well. So you already had that thinking, you already had that experience. You also own a marina. With slips. And I believe the opportunity was not at your marina specifically, at one next door, but you started thinking about, all right, well, now I have all this knowledge and experience. Could this be applied to the on the water? And so you had an opportunity come up and you started exploring and ideating what that looked like. So just take me back to that time where this was manifesting in your head. Like, what were you thinking about? Were there any builders or manufacturers out there that you found that could be able to, you could purchase these and operate them? What was happening at that time that you started ideating this?
Yeah, probably 15 years ago, 2010, 11, 12, something like that. And there's a marina that came up for sale that was adjacent to our marina, but it only had like 12, 13 slips. And it wasn't priced correctly to run it as a marina. It was no way really to make that cash flow because it really had no other amenities or anything else like that. It was just basically what I talked about earlier was a boat parking lot. So what we had created on land with the townhouses, the waterfront townhouses, short-term rental, and the whole social media world and internet and all that stuff. Now we were seeing things, and we were seeing the floating structures, nice pictures of floating structures. So we came up with a concept that we were gonna create, and we were gonna call it Houseboat Row.
Mm.
And we were going to buy the marina and put in 12 modern houseboats and rent them out. We either sell them, and monetize the slip rates from there, make cash flow on the sale of the unit and also the cash flow from renting the slip. And then the numbers really work. But once we really dug into it, we could not find a product here on the West Coast or any builders here on the West Coast that was building that type of product. All the product that we were seeing on via internet and social media was pretty much on the West Coast, which it's been big out there for years. So it kind of put a damper in our plan. Plus, we realized that the city of Annapolis would probably highly not support something like this just due to the geographical location of where Eastport is and all the NIMBYism and all that stuff that goes on in some of these municipalities on what they would like to see and what they don't want to see. So at the end of the day, that project never got off the ground, but it was a great learning lesson. And I think it kind of opened our eyes up to what's going on in the marina industry.
Right. So you went through that experience and you couldn't find a builder, so you didn't move forward. But the idea, you always had the idea in your head, and then here I come along in 2021, summer 2021. At the time, I engaged you because at the time I was doing a lot of work for my nonprofit, the Live Water Foundation, where one of our programs was we were deploying and managing oyster cages off of residential and commercial piers in downtown Annapolis and Eastport. And so I went to you to see if we could deploy some oyster cages that would help clean up the water in the downtown area. And this was right when I think 2 months after the idea was turned into an idea that I was like, all right, there's something here. Like I'm going to start moving forward to see if I could create something out of this. And
You're right.
and so when I went to you, having no intention of pitching you the idea of Flow Home, which was just an idea at the time, but I saw an opportunity as a marina owner. I got to sit down with you, and then I pitched you this idea, and I remember it was like kind of the light bulb moment went off for you, and you immediately your posture changed. You got really interested, and it was a great memorable experience. But you know what? From if you can remember, like what were you thinking at the time, our first interaction, and when I brought this idea to you, like what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it vividly. Like, I mean, I'm always on when it comes to like, and I know we had these conversations about work life integration, right? So I would say that I'm always working, right? So
Hmm.
I'm always looking for opportunity. And this, once again, it's hustle meets opportunity, right? It was only because of the 30 years of hustle that I put in that I was in a position to be at the point where you brought this opportunity and you told me about it, right? Hustle meets opportunity, right? We didn't meet at University of Penn. We didn't meet at on Wall Street. We didn't, it was that hustle that meet opportunity. Same on your end. You were out there, you were hustling, right? You were hustling. You were doing what you know to do. And so those two opportunities came together. And I mean, when you brought it to me, I mean, I don't even see it as a pitch. I mean, the minute you said it, I mean, I was like, wow, this is yeah, this spot on. I like it, right? I mean, it's something that we wanted to do. It's something that I saw the whole marine industry it needs because there's no creativity in the marina space as far as experiential. I see that the world is changing. The younger generation that's behind us, they see the world different, they operate different, and none of that is segueing into the marina industry. And so when you first started talking about it, I mean, it didn't take much for my to make my ears stand up, right? And once you said it, I believe that I asked you a couple just basic questions. Where's the product? Like, where can we get the product? Because that was the challenge that I faced and stopped me from moving forward because there was no product that I thought that was going to fit this mid-Atlantic geographical area that would be good enough to make someone to get on. Um, and so, but when you showed me the picture of the product, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And
Mm.
then when you told me it could be sourced locally, and then you told me some other insights about it as far as the modular and all that stuff, I immediately thought that this is something that we could really scale, and the marina industry needs it. So, yeah, well, I don't think it was much pitching you had to do. I think it was destined to be, right? Right place, right time. Um, and yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, so we joined forces. So this is summer, late summer, fall of 21. And we had some opportunities, small local opportunities that we were pursuing. But the more we thought about it, the bigger the opportunity became. And I remember you reaching out to me one day and be like, hey, man, like, I feel like I need to introduce you to someone. He's an old friend, known him a long time, very successful. Which our third partner, Jerry South, who I interviewed in episode one, and take me back through that time where what were you thinking, and why you felt like Jerry was the missing piece of this partnership that we formed to ensure that what we were doing, that we were going to be as successful as possible.
Here's what I learned over my 13 years of my 38 years of entrepreneurship. And it took me 13 years, my first 13 years to learn this, right? Is that, and there's a saying, they say, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go with many, right?
Hmm.
So my first 13 years of business, I was everything. I'm the CEO, I'm the accountant, I'm this, I'm that. And you wind up doing more than what you need to do. And you really don't get to a point where you can really scale and grow, right? Because you're the smartest person in the room all the time, right? You want to have control of everything all the time, right? You want to be the head of everything all the time. And it took me 13 years to kind of figure that out, that if you want to go big, you got to have good partners, strategic partners, great relationships. And I just knew that this opportunity was something that could be very big. And I've been knowing Jerry 38 years. So we came up in Annapolis. We met on a basketball court 39 years ago. He started his first company around the same time I started my first company in Annapolis. Annapolis is a very small town. So, if you're doing business, you're an entrepreneur in Annapolis, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come in contact with each other. So yeah, we just had a great, respectful, good relationship. So when this opportunity came, and I said, when I looked at it, I was like, look, if this is something that, we're going to tackle, we're going to do, I think it's somebody we should talk to because he could add a lot of value to what it is we want to do or what we're trying to do. And that's why I made the introduction to say, hey, let's go talk to Jerry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
done a lot of things in business, but he scaled like we in the first interview, he told 13,000 employees, $350 million in revenue. So I thought he would make a good partner for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think you can agree with me. Just being in the room with him, having these great discussions and thinking about strategy, growth. I mean, just his experience, but his energy as an entrepreneur is so invaluable. And I'm with you. I've always built businesses around building it with people. I've never wanted to do it alone. It's much more fun to be able to do it with others that have the same vision as I do. Um, I want to go back though. because I think this is an important part of the story and how we got here is, we early on, we're not houseboat builders. And our intention was to find a manufacturing partner that could build us the assets, but through our research and testing out different relationships with the builders that existed out there, is we couldn't
Hmm.
find anyone that could build the quality and especially at scale that we intended to. And so we turn to you, the builder who's been in real estate and construction for a long time, to Selly, it's time to put your tool belt on and go to work, and let's figure this out with no playbooks. Take me back to that time when you realized that, all right, well, we're going to have to figure this out. And there really isn't a playbook. You were able to leverage a lot of the connections that you had to find the right people to do it. But like, take me back to that time. What was your mindset? What were you thinking? And like, how did you put all these pieces together to get us to this point? Which without that, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, unfortunately and unfortunately, the era that I grew up in and my surroundings, there was never a playbook, right? There was never a playbook for anything. We weren't fortunate enough to have the playbook or the blueprint to various different things. So you had to figure it out. When we grew up, hey, your parents wouldn't didn't have enough money to buy you a bicycle. You had to make a bicycle. You
Mhm.
go out and you get parts and you assemble parts from different people and maybe go to this neighborhood, get the handlebars from somebody and this, and you had to put it together. So, like I said, fortunately and unfortunately, never had the playbook. So we had to try to figure it out as we go. And it's the same fundamentals that I had to use to this and help us create our own playbook. I was fortunate enough in the 38 years of being in business, and one of my businesses is real estate and having a construction company and developing a lot of projects. I did have contracting experience and I had contractor relationships. So I was able to dig back into those connections and put some teams together and assemble the product that we need. So it had its challenges. I mean, it still does, but we figured it out. And we got through it. I mean, it was a lot of hard work. So when I talk to people and they say, "Oh, they're gonna do this," and I say, "Okay, well, good luck." Not saying you can't, but it was pretty grueling. Literally putting the tool belt back on, as I was saying, right?
Yep. Yep. One of the things that I don't think we thought about too deeply at the beginning, but I think we quickly realize what one of the superpowers and value creations of what we're doing for really society, and what a lot of these waterfront cities talk about, which is there's not enough access to the water.
Hmm.
And one of we realized pretty quickly is like that's what we're doing. We're creating access for a much larger demographic of people to be able to enjoy the water, not necessarily having to own a boat. That historically that was the only way that you get into some of these exclusive environments. And I know access is really big for you. And just from your point of view, what does that mean to you, and how we're doing it, and what the future holds regarding just creating access to exclusive waterfronts?
Yeah, well, for the longest time, everybody, well, people who pretty much study history know that waterfront was industrialized for the most part, right? Because that's the way they move commerce from one place to the other, right? There weren't highways 95, 395, 495. All the commerce went up and down the waterfront. But what's happening now is that all the waterfront is being privatized. So people having access to water, right? It's becoming slim to none, right?
Mm.
You can't access the water. I mean, you go into some cities, you might be able to walk around a promenade, but there's really no, in my eyesight, there's really no real true access to the waterfront anymore. So I'm just super excited about the access that we're providing to people who typically would not have access to be able to access the true waterfront, right? So if you think about it, it's just not only for, I mean, it's especially inside the minority community, right? But then you also have those who, who just, who don't have a boat or don't have a friend with a boat or not part of the yacht club, to be able to take advantage of being able to experience these waterfront accommodations. So when you think of the floating hospitality or anything, these floating amenities that would live inside of an exclusive marina or a private marina, that a person who is not part of the marina, don't have a boat at the marina, can go in there and they can enjoy that whole waterfront experience and everything that comes along with it, i.e., swimming pool, tiki bar, paddle boards, jet skis, everything that might live inside that environment. That person could go there and enjoy that, whether it's for the day, for a weekend, and just like the same person who might have a 150-foot burger, right? And they get to sit beside them and have conversation with them and talk to them. And that's the way that you lift up a group of people. You get to see more, right? You get to experience more, right? So you want to do more. So access is very, very important to me. And it's always been. It's because that's what changed, I believe, helped change my life, is because we had access to it, right? We were
Mm.
able to go down into the water, take our boat, and we could go down the round bay and we could see the $1 million homes along the water and all that stuff. So it was that access that changed my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's powerful. As a marina owner, and you understand the historical perception about a type of business like FLOHOM in the marina industry, but we're experiencing it in real time. That narrative is starting to change. Marina owners' perceptions around how are they going to survive and compete in the future, especially these smaller marinas, around offering different types of amenities or adding new revenue streams in the marina. What do you think is happening right now in the marina industry that's causing these marina owners and operators to kind of change their mind in what a marina is and how do they operate?
Well, I think for the I would call it the mom and pop, still mom and pop marina operators, a lot of them are facing, just like everybody else, the decreasing cost of inflation and cost of materials, the rising cost of property taxes, operating expenses, maintenance costs, right? All of them are dealing with that, and now they're starting to be more open to figuring out how they can make more money with their marina, and looking at the marinas not so much as we talked about earlier, a boat parking lot, right? How can I make more revenue per slip? And that's where the creativity is coming in right now. And I think especially what the whole floating movement. I mean, there's a movement. I mean, you and I probably are more what's the word I want to use? Aware of it, because we live it and see it every day, what's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the floating world, right? But there is a mass movement of all these are floating accommodations. So the mom and pop operators, which I think here's the biggest issue with them, is majority of them are that baby boomer generation. So they're in that transition period where they really don't have a succession plan. The kids really don't want the business, right? They just really want the proceeds from the business, from their parents selling the business, right? And the mom and pop operators don't want to put in the capex, even if the capex is putting in floating structures or floating amenities to generate more revenue. They just don't want to spend it. So I see a lot of the mom and pop marinas just being at they kind of just in limbo, right? Just waiting for hopefully the big private equity guys to come by and make them an offer that they can't refuse to sell it. And maybe they, here's what you do: reach out to Flowhole, reach out to us on all the social media platforms, or go to our website, www.flowhome.com, and we can help you the right way. We eat, we live, we breathe this. We have a great team. We have a great product. We're innovators, we're creative, and we could basically take your marina and we could turn it into something that's real special. So just reach out to us.
Amen to that. Amen to that. You've had a few phone calls and door knocks over the years from permanent capital type marina ownership groups. Just curious, just I'm sure they're throwing big numbers at you, but do you ever see yourself getting out of kind of what you've built at Butler's, or is this something that is going to be a family legacy type piece of real estate opportunity that you can pass on?
Well, it all depends, right? I mean, it all depends. I mean, the world is constantly changing, right? And this is the problem with some municipalities, and this is why they can make it harder for the smaller marina owners and you want to call them the mom and pop operators, right? That when you when you make it as a municipality, when you make it so that the marina owner cannot adjust and adapt to the changing times and get creative to do certain things to generate more revenue per slip by putting in floating amenities and things like that. As an owner, you got to think about that and say, where's my potential for growth? Right? Am I going to be stuck because I'm in a city that's not business friendly or not allow me to grow with the times and adapt and make my marina competitive with the bigger marinas out there? I mean, it's something that you got to really think about, right?
Yeah.
Basically controlling your EBITDA or your NOI, right? Hey, bro, it's only so much that you can do. And I think this is another reason why private equity missing it. You can only, you can't just keep going up on slip rents and not provide the tenants anything else, right?
Right.
At a point in time, they're going to start looking at saying, well, look, I came in here, it used to be $12,000 a year. Now it's $24,000 a year, and I'm getting the same old thing, right? But those marina owners who have creativity that want to bring into certain things, like, look, I would love to put like a floating sauna in my marina that they can enjoy, right? I would love to put a floating cigar lounge or something else, maybe a floating ice cream parlor. And now you're also giving other people access, right? But to be able to generate more revenue where I could change the economics and keep up and down with inflation and all these other things. But if you're dealing with a municipality that won't allow you to do these things, yeah, you gotta. I think that you got to have those options on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're experiencing this in Annapolis. I mean, you are where your marina is. I mean,
Yes.
Safe Harbor now owns three marinas in downtown Annapolis. And again, there's nothing wrong with Safe Harbor. They're a great business, but I think they're an example, and your story is an example of you have to make a decision based on the limitations of what you're able to do in a place like Annapolis, which is very prideful in their history, rightfully so. But I think sometimes some of these jurisdictions are too stuck on the past and really need to think about how they can support their local businesses because, like what you just described, I mean, it things are getting more costly, and if you only have so many slips, it's like you got to start thinking about how you can continue to get creative to continue on the business. And so I hope if anyone from the jurisdictions are listening, it's like you really gotta pay attention to what's happening right now, because at some point, just like on land, permanent capital is going to come in and scoop everything up, and then all your localization of what makes a place like Annapolis great is going to go away.
Yeah, and that's the short sightedness of it, right? Is that you're so focused on the little thing here is, oh, no floating, no houseboats, no this, no that, right? And all at the same time, like you said, nothing against Safe Harbor and all the big private equity companies, right? But then when you got to wake up one day and they got to own 95% of the marinas in Annapolis, and now what, right? Now what? How do you manage that? So you get the real recreational boater, right, who wants to rent a slip, right? There's no wealthy boat owner. This is a recreational boat that wants to rent a slip. And the average slip used to be for that boat, let's call a 40-foot boat, is 12 grand. And you go now through every place in Annapolis and all the slips are $24,000. How can he even keep his boat at the marina?
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
and so you have to have that. These municipalities need to wake up and start to understand that. And I'm all about regulations and how you regulate things, but you just you can't stop, change. You can't stop growth. I mean, it's just, you got to figure out how to manage it, right? And how to make it acceptable so that these smaller operators or even mid-sized operators could be able to operate. I mean, because we all know what private equity, I mean, listen, they got tons of money and they can hold out 7 to 10 years, right? Even though they may be overpaying for a property or whatever. And just your average mom and pop operator or small mid-sized operator don't have that luxury.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, because this is one of the things I relate to very strongly is the work life integration. To me, I've built my life around work life integration because it's all about the lifestyle. I love being on the water. It's where I want to live permanently. As a former professional water sports athlete, like that's where I'm most happy. And so to me, there's no balance. Like I infuse everything together, and I know that's your mantra as well. And I guess the question is like, why did you choose that path versus maybe like that work-life balance where they're more separated?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when you make your work, to me, now I'm just speaking for me, right? When you make your work your life, then it's not work, right? It's not work. When you love what you do and you make it a part of your life, you just integrate it into your life, then it just becomes second nature, right? Like I said it earlier that when it comes to entrepreneurship, I don't have a turn off switch. So no matter where I go, I'm on vacation or whatever, I'm always looking at what could be the next hot thing. How could this, or what's going on here? How could that complement what we're doing here? Right. So you just make it a part of you. You just work it. You make it a part of your life. And I think with that, I mean, it just worked for me for 38 years, and it's easy, right?
Yeah.
It's easy. I mean, it's like I'll tell people, I said, listen, I don't have a problem. I'll work 16-hour days, but I'm not looking for a job, right? But when you have work life integration, then you really don't have a job, right? Because
Mhm.
it's just a part of your life.
Yeah. So the last question I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask everyone on here because I think it's super interesting to get everyone's viewpoint on this. But what this podcast is named the floating economy. To you, when the floating economy is fully built out, your vision, FLOHOM's vision of the floating economy, like what does that look like? What does that future state experience look like?
They say in the world, there's nothing in the world that hasn't already been created, right? I don't know. Have you heard that saying before? Everything that's going to be created have already been created, right? In some form
Hmm.
or fashion, right? So what we're creating is something it already exists, right? But it just exists on land. So in my floating economy, what I see when it's fully built out, what you will see floating town centers. And when I mean by town centers, I'm not talking about like your town centers with your big high rises and stuff like that. You may even see some of those. But when I think of a floating town center, I'm thinking of a floating marina town center. So inside this marina, you will have boats, you'll have your sport fish, you have your sailboat, you'll have your charter boats, you'll have your floating bottega, your floating store, your floating boutique clothing store. You'll have all these things will exist inside of a floating marina, right? So the same reason why they created these town centers, and the town centers does exceptionally well because people love convenience, right?
Hmm.
So if you go to a town center, at every town center, you'll see residential, right? And in that residential is because people, they can walk down, they can go to a restaurant, they go get something to eat, they go get their hair cut, they go get the spa, they go get their nails done, they can go get some groceries, right? So in this whole floating economy, that's what you will see. You will see these marinas, and they will be basically, I call them floating town centers, right? And they will come in all different sizes. From you get created with a 30 slip marina, and you can create it with a 200, 300, 400 slip marina, right? and you will see these floating ecosystems. And that's what I envision seeing across especially here in the US, right?
Yeah. No, I love
That's what
it.
it,
At
that's
the
what it
floating
looks like
town
to me.
center is, I love that terminology, and I think you're exactly right. And I know that's the way that we're thinking of it as we continue to grow the company. Um, Awesome. Well, Selly, this has been an awesome conversation. There's so much more we can talk about, and we're going to do another one of these in the near future just to dive into some of the more specific things that we're doing at FLOHOM and how you're involved with that. But really, today was really just to get your story and what your background and your role is, and so for people to know that we have an amazing team of entrepreneurs and leaders, and we've all come together to build this big vision that we have, and you're a core part of that. All
Yeah.
right, man. Well, have a great weekend. I will see you in the
Yep.
office soon.
All right. Appreciate you, Brian. Thank you.